Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the MAPC Executive Committee meeting of September 22nd, 2021, not 2022, to order. This meeting, the Executive Committee meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom video conference, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, and as extended by Section 2475, signed by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. This section also allows town council, state boards, and other bodies to continue to hold remote public meetings until April 1st, 2022, to provide public access to the meeting while limiting the potential of abuse for video conferencing technology, aka Zoom bombing. Members of the public may view the proceedings at youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. And with that, I would like to call the meeting to order. I see a lot of faces here. Thank you all for taking time to join us. It's been a little bit since we saw each other after taking August off, so I'm thrilled. So many people are here prioritizing this meeting for such an important conversation today. And with that, I'm going to do roll call. So if everyone could come off mute, I am going to do my best not to completely butcher anyone's name, but if it happens, know my intents are good and it is unintentional. All right, here we go. Sharonda Almeida. Keith Bergman.
Present.
Karen Canfield.
Here.
Adam Chapdelaine.
Here.
Robert Cohen. Mayor Joseph Curtatone. Tom Daniel. John DePriest.
Here.
Yolanda Greaves.
Here.
Sandra Hackman. Mo Handel.
Here.
Tabor Keeley.
Here.
Angie Liu.
Here.
Steve Olenoff.
Here.
Caitlin Pasafaro. George Proakis.
Here.
Courtney Rainey. Jenny Raitt.
Here.
Vandana Rao.
Present.
Sam Seidel.
Here.
Steve Silvera.
Here.
Lauren Shirtliff. Mayor Yvonne Spicer. Juan Vega.
Present.
Elaine Banya.
Here.
And me, Erin Wortman, present. All right, great. Thank you so much for your patience on that. I really appreciate it. I know it takes a little bit of time in the beginning, but let's get to business. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from June 16th, 2021 and July 21st, 2021. Are there any questions, comments, or motions before us? Vandana?
I just wanted to know that I was present at the June meeting, so so that it's listed under the executive members that are present. That change can be made. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know of that. So with that change, is there any other change that needs to be made? If not at this time, go ahead, Mo.
Move adoption.
Of both minutes?
Yes.
With that one change? Great. Thank you so much.
That one change included, yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Mo. Is there a second on the?
Second.
Jenny, you did second. So great. So motion made by Mo, second made by Jenny. Because we're virtual, roll call is required for all votes. So here we go. Sharonda? Keith?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Adam?
Yes.
Bob Cohen? Mayor Curtatone? Tom Daniel? John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda? Sandra? Mo?
Aye.
Tabor?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin? George,
Aye.
Courtney,
Present.
great. Jenny,
Aye.
Vandana,
Aye.
Sam,
Yes.
Seidel, okay. Steve Silvera,
Yes.
Lauren, Mayor Spicer, Juan,
Aye.
Elaine,
Here.
and Erin, yes. And just so we can reflect it in the minutes, Courtney and Elaine, that was for the passage of the 2 sets of minutes. Are you, is your vote still favorable?
Yes.
Okay. Courtney says yes, and Elaine, yes, you're nodding.
Yeah, minute to minute. Yeah.
It's not really the attitude we like to hear, but thank you so much, Elaine.
No,
We
the
do
minutes are just a reflection of what was said. It's
Yes.
nothing else.
Okay, great. So with that, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for that. Great. So next up on the agenda is the report of treasurer. Sam?
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Erin. As you might be able to tell, I'm dialing in remotely from Central Vermont, so welcome to Central Vermont. This month, we're going to look at 2 reports, the May report and the June report. On the agenda, I think it also added the July report. We will look at that at the next meeting. So this is May and June. And just to note, this June wraps up the fiscal year. So that's, we're looking at the end of FY21 and July will begin FY22. We'll start with the May minutes and I'll just make a couple of points about it. Overall, the numbers are good. And you'll see that the overhead rate is going down quite significantly. And that's due to the fact that we've been able to charge a lot to direct labor. So a lot of project work was happening during that time. Which is good. And our administrative expenses were pretty much on budget as I look at them right now. That left us with an overhead rate of 115%, which is well below our approved overhead rate. That impacts the June report, which I'll switch to now, and I'll take questions on both of them once we get through all of it. In the June report, you'll see that the overhead rate jumps up quite significantly to 132%, which is well above our 123%. That's because June closes out the fiscal year. And in that month, a lot of sort of reconciling happens between all the final invoices that are coming in and the various projects and the assignment of charges to the various projects. And that's why the June overhead rate rises so much. The net impact, though, however, is positive. It brings us right to our 123% approved rate for the year, which is a good thing. And that means that we'll close out that fiscal year, at least with these reports, right at 123%, which is really right where we want to be. I should also note that these are preliminary reports. These will all get finalized once the audit is complete in a couple of months. Well, in a few months, I would say. Nothing else particularly to note, except that we end the year with a reasonable amount of net income, which is sort of income off the top. With that, I think I'll just ask for any questions, comments, thoughts. Hearing none, I will hand it back to Erin for acceptance of the report of the treasurer.
Great, thank you, Sam. And just moving forward, if anyone has any questions, either use that raise hand option, please, or speak up. You're just all on 2 screens, so I just don't want to miss anyone, okay? Thanks so much, Sam. Okay, so with that, I would like to entertain at this time a motion to accept the report of the treasurer. Yes, Mark. Oh, hold on.
Mark, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yes,
I
Mark.
just wanted to say a little something if I could, which is we are now through the FY 21 fiscal year with this income statement that is before you. And it is not an insignificant point that we managed as an agency to weather the teeth of the pandemic and the recession without any layoffs, without salary reductions, without loss of programs, and with a small net income, and to keep our level of chargeability the same as we predicted during a period of great instability. I want to thank our leadership. I want to thank among the officers, and Sam, our finance staff led by Sheila, and all of our staff, because it's an interdepartmental effort. I can remember those very early conversations in March and April of 2020 about whether or not and how we could keep the ship afloat, and we were able to do so. And it didn't just happen. So I do want to say thank you for that, and to acknowledge it at this important juncture.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Sam, did you?
No, I should have said similar. The ability to get through that last year with all the challenges, very impressive. So good work to the team. And Sheila particularly, note her.
Great. Thank you so much. And ditto to everything. Okay. And with that, if there is, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the report of the treasurer.
So moved.
Motion made by Yolanda. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mo. So the motion's made by Yolanda to accept the report of the treasurer, with the second made by Mo. Roll call vote is required, so everyone get off mute, please. And here we go. Sharonda?
Aye.
Thanks. Keith?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Bob Cohen? Mayor Curtatone? Tom Daniel? John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Sandra? Mo?
Aye.
Tabor?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin? George?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Vandana?
Aye.
Sam?
Yes.
Steve Silvera?
Aye.
Lauren? Mayor Spicer? Juan?
Aye.
Elaine?
Aye.
And Erin? Aye. And with that, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, next up on the agenda is the report of the executive director. Mark, take it.
Well, I'm not going to give a verbal report of the executive director this time because I want to save time for Metro Common. You have a report covering 3 months. It's basically all of the summer. I would ask you to look at those sections that you're most interested in. I can't really expect everybody to read all 19 pages of that document. And I will be glad to entertain questions by email or a phone call if you want to discuss any of the elements that are in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So does anyone have any questions or comments based on the report? And if at this time you don't have any questions but have some later, obviously Mark is always available to answer, or specific departments are always available to answer any inquiries you may have. Not seeing anyone. Okay, great.
I guess I would,
Thank you.
if I may, Erin,
Go ahead.
just mention one important management issue, because we don't usually incorporate management issues into the ED report. It's more focused on our external kind of outward facing project and policy work. But the staff has been working very hard on our reopening plan, a draft of which went to the directors, I think on Monday of this week. And we are hoping to finalize it and send it to staff by, I would say by the 3rd of October is our goal at the moment. We had hoped that the office would reopen more fully. We had several dates for that, which I postponed. I'm not alone in that. I'm probably with about a 500 million people who run agencies and companies and other things all over the world on this matter. But we decided at the end that we were going to base reopening upon a series of metrics that we would continue to track, as opposed to setting target dates that didn't really mean very much. And so that's the system we're implementing. People should know the office is open. Any staff can come to the office and work. I'm here now, and there are other staff who are here now on each of the 3 floors. But we are not yet requiring staff to come in. That's when we say fully reopened, we mean requiring staff to come in at least 2 days a week. That's not going to happen right away due to the Delta variant. It's probably going to not happen until the spring, although there was some good news in the press this morning about the future of the pandemic. We'll see if that holds. I think the staff are overall appreciative of the gradual and data-based approach to reopening. I often use the words reopen the office. I don't use the words return to work, because everybody is working, arguably harder than they do when they're in the office. And I know that many of the people on this executive committee know that from their own experience. Angela Howard, Margie Weinberger, Allison Zimmern, and Jen Garcia and Heidi Anderson have been leading our efforts in this regard. And I thought you'd all want to know sort of where we stand on this situation at the moment.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions on that item? Great. Seeing none, we're going to keep it moving on this agenda. So next up is the presentation and endorsement of Metro Common. So Eric Hove, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everybody, for having us and so much time devoted to this important plan on the agenda today. As we kick this off, Mark's going to say a couple words, and then we invited our co-chairs, Alice Brown and Jacqueline Furtado, to join us today as well. I'm not sure if Jackie's here yet, but I'd like to really acknowledge them and thank them and let them say a few words, and then we'll jump into a presentation that will be followed by questions and feedback, and then a request to endorse the plan. So Mark, you want to start us off?
Sure. Eric, thank you very much. So folks, this is one of the biggest and most important things we do as an agency. Under our statute, we develop a regional land use and policy plan for Greater Boston. We do so about once every 10 years, or at least we strive to do so once every 10 years, although the last one was adopted in 2008, which, if my math is correct, is a little bit more like 13 years. But over the last 3 years, Eric has been leading this effort with the members of his team at the Department of Strategic Initiatives, but really with the engagement of virtually every staff member at MAPC. We had to do it under circumstances that nobody anticipated and which nobody could really understand when they first began. It has been a very difficult thing to develop a regional plan during a pandemic, a recession, a racial reckoning in the country, a period of great upheaval politically at the national level, and a period of time in which people didn't really know what they could expect of the future, and when many of them were uncertain what to ask government for and what policies to pursue. Others were very certain what to ask government for and what policies to pursue. There were a lot of voices. They were frequently loud and insistent voices. They weren't always in agreement with one another. But we found throughout the region people who were eager to be involved, hundreds of them, arguably thousands of them, who were eager to be involved, who had life experience and recommendations to share, who had things that they were looking for the future of their own futures, the future of their families, the future of their communities, and conveyed those to us as we developed goals, scenarios, conducted research, and finally developed policy recommendations in this endeavor. The plan is, as the Metro Future Plan was, bold and achievable. When we started this process, we expected that we would be tweaking Metro Future. That's what we said. That's what we talked about. That is not what this plan is. It is a considerably more forceful and insistent and wide-ranging document than Metro Future. I think it is consistent with the needs and demands of the times in that regard. It is still a plan that offers broad vision and detailed policy recommendations. So it is sort of, the big view to guide us and the small view to get some things done. I'm very proud of the staff for having brought it together. I'm very proud of the leadership of many board members, particularly in their subregions, to help us to develop this plan. And I'm not going to thank any individuals other than Eric, who led the effort, because I would inevitably miss more of them than I would be able to thank. We were blessed to have an external advisory committee that stuck with us and saw themselves as leaders of this effort under Alice's and Jackie's leadership throughout the process. When I asked Alice and Jackie to be co-chairs, I think I probably had my fingers crossed behind my back when I said it would probably be about a year. And we have the same two co-chairs today that we had at the beginning. And I am very, very thankful to them for that, and to all the members of the committee for that effort. As Eric will describe, or Jackie and Alice will describe, the committee has voted to recommend it to the executive committee and then to the full council for adoption. And I am thankful for that. I'm going to let Eric do his presentation, and we will be available to answer questions, to have discussion, to hear your feedback after that presentation is finished. I think I'm now turning it over perhaps to Alice and Jackie.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome, Alice.
Hi. Something is strange with my computer. Give me 1 second. There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm really honored to be here, just as I was honored to be asked by Mark to serve in this capacity and to have the opportunity to serve with Jackie Furtado. And I'm sure she'll be joining us soon. It was a really great learning experience to co-chair this with her, and also to get to know the members of the External Advisory Committee. Eric and his team did a really remarkable job of trying to bring people who think about planning through a lot of different lenses. Some of us were actual planners. Some people were like, I'm just in this because I understand how municipal government works, but not how this planning stuff works. There was just a really wide range of people with different perspectives. And I think we all learned from each other, not only about policy, but also how to communicate with each other on Zoom about how we understood the things that unfolded as the process progressed. As you'll see in this plan, it demonstrates both flexibility and big picture thinking. I was really pleased as well to serve on the scenario planning group and learned a lot from that process. When we began that process, we did not anticipate a pandemic. You have lived through it too, so I don't need to tell you that we've had a live experiment in how to prioritize equity, or whether or not we choose to. One, about how to keep people housed, an experiment in rethinking streets, and experiments in what it means to build community when people aren't physically together all the time, what it means when place isn't really relevant and people still choose to stay. And then just this last fall's election led to a dramatic shift in federal policy and funding, and that is something else addressed by the scenarios. And then, of course, we're always thinking about, what does climate change mean for this region? We have had very hot days in the last few months. We've also had some weirdly cold days and some rain that I can tell you, as someone who works with the MWRA and Boston Water and Sewer Commission, they have been paying attention to. So it's important that we become a more climate resilient region, as well as a net carbon region, and those are also addressed by the plan. And I'm really there is so much incredible work done by the MAPC staff, particularly Eric, but I know that Lizzie, who's no longer here on the team, as well as Sasha, have done a tremendous amount of work as well. All of the research work, the policy creation work, and the scenario planning work really is phenomenal. And I hope that you all have a chance to review the plan and then help to implement it, which I think is really why this plan exists. And with that, I'll turn it to Eric.
Thank you, Alice. And just can't say enough about how great it was to work with you and Jackie. Your leadership, over the last 3 years has been tremendous. You really pushed us when we needed to be pushed. And, the EAC in general was just this fantastic group of really committed, passionate, smart people from across the region, like Jackie said, from a range of disciplines and expertise. And they really put hours and hours and hours into this. We generally met bi-monthly over the last 3 years, and many of the members came to event after event after event. You know, I definitely give some gold stars to Chris Clutchman and Grant Hauber, who really came to almost every focus group that we held, and just tremendously generous with their time and their counsel over the years. Like Mark said, the EAC didn't vote to endorse the plan and recommend that the MAPC Executive Committee recommend the plan. They did make 4 changes at that meeting, really helped focus a couple of policy areas. We had referenced commercial displacement, but didn't really get too deep on it. So we did make a change there. And Steve Olenoff's suggestion, we also tightened up language on the local stipends to volunteers who are participating in government functions. So, and something else I'd just like to mention, part of the motion was to allow us to continue to make minor modifications as we move forward, which I really appreciated that flexibility. Definitely made some changes in the acknowledgements. Like Mark said, it's like 3 pages worth of thank yous, because there really were so many people who contributed to this plan. With that, let me jump into the screen share. And I'm going to be joined by Lizzie and Kasha and Emily to just preview what's in the plan. And then we will open it up for feedback, questions, discussion, and then the vote. So I think everybody can see that. Today, we're going to go over some of the 2050 content, just kind of recap the process. I know many of you have been with us throughout the process. I do also want to thank Jenny, Rate, Steve Olenoff, Tabor, Keith, and the officers who also served on the EAC as well as on the executive committee. Kasha is going to pull out a few of the more potentially controversial recommendations. We want to make sure to highlight those and get your take on them. I know there was a lot of content in there to get through, so we just want to make sure that some of the ones that are potentially most controversial are flagged for you and that we can discuss them if need be today. And then Emily's going to talk a little bit about what's next in terms of our work. And like we said, there were really so many committees and staff and external partners and mini grant partners and just general public that participated in this plan. We started out 3 years ago reviewing a really robust selection of local master plans which helped steer us in terms of how we selected the action areas, and also helped influence the policy chapters that ended up as the plan recommendations. We also had annual municipal leadership breakfasts, which was a great way to connect with mayors and managers and senior local government staff. And then let me just skip ahead to this one. In the visioning phase, we really focused on in-person meetings back when that was a thing. This picture on the left is a member of youth organization at the event on the snowy day down in Hibernian Hall with Mayor Marty Walsh. But we really were really pleased to be able to bring in youth and seniors and everybody in between as part of the visioning and really throughout the process all the way through the vetting of the recommendations. Then the picture on the right, this was one of the visioning features in terms of love letters to your cities and towns, both the things you like and want to keep, and suggestions for how to improve things, which really helped us when we were formulating the goals. A year and a half into the plan, things changed. It became all remote in terms of our engagement. So much of the scenario, action area, and recommendations was all done online through emails, through focus groups that were Zoom led. But I'd say, in some ways we were able to reach more people as a result of the remote meetings. But we definitely missed the in-person and are hoping to start that up again when the coast is clear, so to speak. When we set out, these were the main aims and aspirations of the plan. We wanted to develop a compelling strong plan that really does set out a roadmap for the future that people can get behind and work towards. We really wanted to provide hope and this idea of agency that we together can affect our future and build the future that we want. You know, it's going to be hard, but it is possible and we can do it. Really did seek to center equity and resiliency. And I think as the planning process unfolded, these became even more emphasized, especially in the recommendations and the focus on recovery, especially with the new federal resources that are available for recovery and rebuilding. And we always intended to do as robust engagement as possible. We really did co-create this plan with the people that participated with us, and that's going to be important, these relationships moving forward, because obviously MAPC can't alone implement this. It's going to take the work of our partners and allies really throughout the region. The content goals, the bold yet achievable long-term goals was really kind of our aim in terms of setting those. And those goals, well, I'll get to those in a second, but the scenarios really allowed us to explore 4 different uncertainties. You know, we're not sure what the future holds. Obviously, like the pandemic is a perfect example of that, but helping us think about what could unfold in the future and how to be agile and be able to be prepared for what's in the future and be able to shift directions when need be. We also sought to develop products and research to help people actually implement the recommendations of the plan to make those changes both statewide and in local communities and even at the neighborhood level. And that's work that's going to continue really over the long term, that will continue to develop additional tools and resources for planners, advocates, and others. And we really did set out to create impactful recommendations that will get us on that trajectory for reaching those goals. The aim really being that these are implementable over the next 2 to 3 legislative cycles for statewide matters. And as Mark and Alice referenced, there were a lot of unexpected over the last 3 years, things that just really weren't on our, that we weren't directly planning for, but that we did have to adapt to and navigate. And all these 3 forces really did influence both the content and the process of the plan. You know, it required us to design a whole new engagement program and implement that program. And, you know, hats off to Emily Torres-Cullinane and her team for really being creative. You know, they spent about a month, you know, we paused for about a month and figured out what do we have to do now that we can't do all the in-person work that we are planning. I'd say we saved some budget on food, but I think we added even more meetings than we were originally planning to try to get as much feedback as possible, especially on the recommendations. You know, I think it also forced us to change the way we worked and when we worked with partners. We definitely had to navigate staff that were pulled off on other assignments. I think it helped modify our language and how we talked and understood these issues that the plan confronts. And I think it really also demanded more urgency in the recommendations. And then with the additional federal resources that were nowhere on our radar, you know, a year to 2 years ago, it really presents a real opportunity to really make significant progress towards the plan's goals in terms of implementing recommendations in the short term or the next 2 to 3 years. What's next? We are going to be turning this into a digital plan. That was the intention all along. We did lose a couple of our web developers in the spring, but just hired a great new team in the digital department. So they're working on that right now. So this will be an interactive digital plan. And we're shooting to have that ready for the council meeting on October 27th. We are translating the content of the plan and also developing indicators that will help us measure progress either towards or away from the goals of the plan. And those 2 will be ready later this fall. We are going to be modeling, taking those projections down to the municipal level. Right now, we have regional level projections in 6 different scenarios, but to help planners and others, you know, understand what might happen at the local level, we will be taking these down to the municipal level again over the fall. And like I mentioned, we have a number of research products and releases on deck. The next one being Retrofitting Suburbia, some really exciting work looking at underutilized commercial, especially strip mall properties, and what those opportunities are for turning those into more productive uses. And finally, and Emily will talk a little bit about this today, really moving into implementation, working with partners, municipal officials, state officials on actually building that constituency to get these things done at the local, state, and neighborhood level. Just a couple more slides from me. The goals, just a refresher. About 2 years ago, the executive committee adopted these as provisional goals. We continued to take feedback on them over the last 2 years, but really no significant changes were made. We did do a few tweaks here and there, especially at the sub-goal level and some of the language that we used, but no earth-shattering changes to those goals that were adopted by both the EAC and the executive committee as provisional. And finally, the action areas of the plan, just wanted to highlight and refresh folks' memory of these. These are the 5 main content areas of the plan. They proved a little challenging in that they are so interconnected. Just want to provide one example of that. One of the goals of the plan is to become a net zero region. But this affects everything. To be able to accomplish this, we need to have great and collaborative state and local leadership. We need support for low-income residents and other residents vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Homes are going to need whole new heating and cooling technologies, and transportation is going to need to be converted to electric. And finally, smart growth must be our growth and preservation model moving forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie and Kasha to talk through some of the recommendations of the plan.
Thanks, Eric. I should just note for anyone who is confused by the earlier comments, I think the plan benefited greatly from to Lizzie's input throughout most of the process. So I'm here, not going anywhere. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the recommendations, kind of what our goal was in developing the recommendations. And then Kasha is going to highlight some of the things that we saw as some of our potentially controversial recommendations. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our exciting, innovative recommendations. Can we get the next slide? Thanks. So really in thinking about the recommendations for the plan, we sort of had a moment, not unrelated to what Eric was saying earlier about the impact that the pandemic had on us. And thinking about the plan is this plan really about recovery? And our initial reaction was the recommendation shouldn't be focused just on recovery, but as we were doing the work, it's really recovery that is the moment that we're in and likely to be in for the next 10 years, which overlaps almost exactly with the time frame for these recommendations. So with the recovery frame in mind, the recommendations really strongly point to and prioritize MAPC's commitment to an equitable and resilient recovery. And so you see that throughout the recommendations that are made really throughout the entire plan. We really wanted to help our writers think about and focus on the root causes of policy issues. So rather than kind of drilling down all the way down to a particular on the ground response, we wanted to try to think about some of those upstream policy responses that would actually give us some of the personal outcomes that we really want to see in our region. And then I think the last major theme of the recommendations that we asked folks to really think about is to kind of pull away a little bit from the silos that we often have in the planning world, where we're sort of focused just on transportation solutions or land use solutions or clean energy solutions, and really think about how all of those solutions are working together. I do think, that came up a lot in our climate recommendations, where we're talking about things related to housing, we're talking about issues related to infrastructure, and it really is also related to climate and how we address climate change. But honestly, it was a thread that kind of pulled through all of the recommendations. And we do our best to actually make those connections in the digital version of the plan to highlight those places where recommendations really overlap and are connected to each other. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Kasha, and she's going to walk through some of those controversial pieces that we wanted to highlight for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lizzie. So I just want to reiterate what I think a few others have said earlier. and just share, we've done really deep engagement on these recommendations, both the writers conducting really deep research, also speaking with policy experts, our coalition partners, individuals who would be most impacted by the recommendations. And as Mark noted, we encourage the writers to be bold yet achievable in their thinking. And inevitably, some of the recommendations ended up a little bit bolder than others. So we just wanted to spend a little bit of time today calling to your attention a few of the recommendations that may be a little bit more controversial. And just to clarify what I think we mean by controversial, these are some of the recommendations that are a little bit bolder, maybe confront more politically sensitive topics, or are items that folks may not expect a regional planning agency to tackle. So the first of that, most of what I'll highlight today are actions within the policy recommendations, but first we wanted to highlight our whole public safety chapter. I want to give a lot of credit to Diego Huezo, who is on this call, as well as Mark Fine and former MAPC staffer Austin Murray for all of their really incredible work on this recommendation. This is already a really challenging topic to address. It's an emotional topic, and they were working in a really rapidly changing environment between all of the protests that were happening this summer against police violence and the legislature taking up a police reform bill. So credit for their approach and their patience in working through this chapter. We heard extensive feedback on this recommendation from community groups, from academics, from youth, from local police forces. And sometimes that feedback, was in direct conflict with one another. We've made extensive edits to this chapter over many different iterations and really ultimately tried to hone in on the topics of reducing the need for police intervention, reducing the likelihood that any intervention would turn violent, and making sure to really highlight, as Lizzie mentioned, how this chapter is very interconnected with other themes that we address across all of the recommendations, from housing stability, increasing mental health support, economic development, and so on. Next slide, please. So this is another recommendation that has evolved considerably since its initial drafting. Originally, this regional land use board was an entity designed to give the region a bigger say in major housing development, and it would potentially have the ability to seek reconsideration of local zoning decisions that were determined to have a negative impact on the region, as documented in regional and local plans. We had a lot of discussions about what the actual function of this entity would be, what was the problem it was trying to solve, and what sort of level of authority we thought was appropriate for this entity. So ultimately, we decided to adjust the scope and the purview of this board, giving it sort of a general coordinating and oversight function over major development, with potentially a very narrow authority to overturn exclusionary zoning decisions, which have negative regional consequences. So it was the exclusionary zoning piece that we thought was really the crux of the issue that this board was trying to address. Next slide. Did we skip one? Could you go back? Oh, okay, maybe not. Next is rent stabilization. So housing instability has always been a major challenge in the region, and obviously the pandemic has exacerbated this issue while also putting a sharper focus on what we can do to promote greater housing stability in the region. This recommendation actually covers 2 slides. Not surprisingly, MAPC has a lot to say on this, and we incorporated a lot of nuance and detail into this topic. But fundamentally, this recommendation is to adopt state enabling legislation that would allow municipalities to impose a cap on rental costs for a specific period of time. And the cap should be based on local market conditions and include complementary policies to ensure buildings are being kept up to code. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it, nope, the slides are just in a different order than I thought. That's fine. So finally, I think this is the last controversial recommendation that we wanted to highlight for you all today. So, and that is to create a statewide reparations commission. There's actually a lot of momentum at the federal, state, and local level to advance reparations for Black residents. California has already established a state level commission. More locally, Amherst is working on a reparations plan right now. And I think, frankly, a lot of people would argue that this is long overdue. So this would be a commission that would determine what the structure of a reparations program would look like, who eligible residents may be, things like that. It would center the recommendations from Black leaders and also work in tandem with other efforts to dismantle systemic racism, which we address in other elements of the recommendations. So I think now I'm going to turn it back over to Lizzie to talk about some of the more innovative ideas that we've highlighted.
Thanks, Kasia. And I should just note, it was actually hard to kind of pick out 5 innovative ideas that we wanted to share with you, because there are a lot of really innovative and exciting ideas in there. And then interestingly, some of the ones that we pulled out were not sort of unique. It's not necessarily the first time that we've thought of these things, but these are some of the ones that we're excited about, particularly as we start to think about how we turn towards implementation. And so we wanted to just highlight them for you, just in case you haven't read all of the many chapters in the recommendation section. So the first is around creating a climate infrastructure bank. This, again, is not a new idea. It's been proposed actually at the federal level. Folks have been talking about it at states and local levels for a really long time. But it would give us an opportunity, excuse me, to really invest in climate infrastructure in a really meaningful and targeted way, particularly as we think of those investments sometimes as riskier. The next one is actually kind of thinking about better integrating employees into employee-owned business models. This is starting to be piloted across the country. We included this recommendation in our comprehensive economic development strategy. And so it is reiterated here as something that we'd love to be able to move forward with. The next one we wanted to highlight for you is around establishing a clean energy community benefits fund and a commission on energy justice. I think this is a really cool idea. The idea behind this one is to make sure that we are targeting our climate investments in those populations that are often most impacted by the effects of climate change, things that we really saw happening over and over and over again during the pandemic. And then coupling those specific investments with a commission that actually looks to think about how we make those investments. So we're kind of putting the dollars and the people right in kind of the middle of addressing the challenge. The next one around setting a statewide VMT reduction goal, that will kind of not surprise folks that we've included that as kind of a bread and butter MAPC type recommendation. And our thought here would be to include this in the clean energy and climate plan that the Commonwealth has put forward and that we could kind of build on. We could actually move towards a VMT reduction goal and really better connect our transportation sector and the emissions that we know are coming so vastly from that sector with our climate goals in the Commonwealth. And then the last one we wanted to highlight for you is to facilitate more public banking. It's actually an idea that we're going to talk about at our next executive committee meeting. It's a legislative proposal currently being considered in the legislature. And this concept was also included in the comprehensive economic development strategy. And really the goal here is to actually make our lending opportunities more equal across the entire region, particularly as we, again, think about recovery. I will note that all of these ideas that we really highlight as innovative ideas are very closely connected to how we're thinking about recovery at MAPC. And so we just kind of wanted to flag them for you as things that we are excited to eagerly begin working on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Torres-Colonin.
All right, thank you so much for that, Lizzie. So what is next? Well, first, we have to have today's approval of Metro Common, but if today goes smoothly and everything is approved, the next order of business is to have an MAPC council meeting October 27th, where we present the plan and also get the council's approval. Leading up to the council meeting, we will have information sessions. We understand there's so much content here, so we will be having some information sessions so council members can dive a little deeper into the content before then. We're also sneaking in an appreciation and networking meeting next Tuesday, inviting our external advisory committee and our community engagement advisory committee, as well as a few others that definitely stepped up and wanting to have that time before the weather changes. So that will hopefully be an in-person meeting. Next slide. So after the council meeting, we will use that time to sort of clean up our digital hub and really focus on a huge social media campaign push to share Metro Common. So for those of you who remember Metro Future, I believe it was December 2008 or something when Metro Future was approved. But the party, the sort of celebration, the in-person event, really rolling it out was the summer following. So we're really hoping to perhaps have an in-person spring gathering where we can really bring people together and sort of celebrate and kick off the implementation of Metro Common. Next slide. Oh, actually, I don't think there's a slide for this. So I just wanted to mention in the spirit of implementation as well. So we don't want to do all of this work and for it to sort of kind of just sit there and say, great, we did it. We want to implement it. So I think throughout the year, you've already heard, we've started to implement some of Metro Common anyway. We've incorporated it into our current policy agenda. MAPC directors have already started implementing some of this into our work planning and thinking about adding it to our fundraising proposals. Our research agenda, I believe, will start to reflect Metro Common, as well as our sub-regional coordinators, looking to present this to cities and towns and to their members in the sort of winter. We also very much want to go back to our cities and towns and offer this for city council or selectmen, our municipal leaders. They were such a huge part of Metro Common and they're a huge part of implementing it. So we want to make sure to do a road show with seeking partners. And I also want to mention there are already people that are so excited about Metro Common that they would like to take it back to their organizations and adopt it. So for example, James Buccioni, the Senior Director of the Massachusetts Healthy Aging Collaborative, wants to adopt Metro Common and has started to talk to his organization about that. The New England chapter of the, I think it's Congress for New Urbanism, is also looking to have us come and present on Metro Common and wants to endorse the plan. And our sister agency, the MPO, we've already presented to them and they've started to think about incorporating it into their long range planning as well. So just wanted to point those out, and we are also all ears to continue talking about implementation and best ways to move this work forward when it is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And we're turning it over to Erin for the next portion.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, everyone, for presenting. I'm sure it was really difficult to kind of highlight different things. And in the spirit of transparency, I actually really like the call out to maybe the more challenging topics. I feel like that's a really authentic approach to talking about a plan that is really complicated because there are so many different kinds of stakeholders and so many different communities, and we're all in this kind of together. So I really appreciate your work on that presentation. Mark, I'm not sure if you want to say anything. I just assume you want to say something.
You always think I want to say. Always think I want to say something, but I think the staff has done a very good job of presenting it. I think Alice teed it up well. We would love to have this plan moved to the council, to the full council for their endorsement. I think it's time to do that. And, we're glad to spend the remainder of the meeting prior to that, answering any questions or hearing your comments about moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Didn't mean to call you out there. So is there any questions, comments, discussion that anyone wants to have before? I know that it was mentioned during the presentation that people have already individually reached out, which is amazing. And just so we're all on the same page, we are seeking today, or for discussion today, is the approval or endorsement of Metro Common to go to the full council in October. Okay, and that includes that motion. I will ask whoever the maker of that motion is, I will ask that that include with the flexibility to make small non-substantive changes as part of that endorsement. Okay. So does anyone want to say anything? Mo, I saw you come off mute.
I'm just getting ready to make the motion if it's
Okay.
appropriate, but I think this is an excellent plan.
Great, thank you, Mo. And I think Steve Olenoff and then the Steves are, I think are back-to-back on comments today. So Steve Olenoff first, and then Steve Silvera, you're on deck.
Thank you. So I did raise a number of issues and most of them have been resolved well. I still have a few more little comments. So I'll probably maybe save them till later. I think a big thing I don't think has been discussed, he keeps saying that this is a living document. Now, did you explain how that's going to work anywhere? Because the problem with a living document is some like we're reading it right now. And then if changes are made, how do we know what changes have been made? Anyone in the future will read the document and automatically you'll be getting those changes. Is there a method for, a list of where you can get on and get changes that have been made and what kinds of changes that you would receive so people can be kept up to date on this? How's that going to work?
Okay, Mark?
Yes, Steve, the way that would work would be as follows. If it is a non-substantive change, for example, the legislature passes a bill that fulfills policy action 14.2 or something like that, and that needs to be adjusted to indicate what's happened, then that would be something that the staff would do on the digital hub on our own. If it's a substantive change, that would not generally need to go before council, but we would generally bring it to the executive committee. We could perhaps say, 6 months down the road, we bring a suite of 4 changes to the executive committee for their consideration. I would not expect that any of the changes are so dramatic that they would require council action. That's what we've done with Metro Future. We have on occasion come to the executive committee for approval of adjustments, but we have not gone back to council. The council gets one chance to vote on the whole thing. So that would be the process we would have in mind.
Right, but what I was asking is, then how do you inform people that this change has been made? Well, people have already read it, they wouldn't know that that change has been made.
So this is something that I have had to get used to. And Steve, maybe some of us of a certain age all have to get used to it, that we are no longer in a world of set narrative documents that are printed and which exist ad infinitum. We are now in a world of digital documents that get changed over time. There are systems in place technologically to indicate when changes are made so that people can go and look if they want. And there will actually be no printed version of Metro Common. It's all on the digital hub. And the changes go up as they are made, possibly as draft before a vote of the executive committee, and then as final after a vote of the executive committee. And there's always information going forward about adjustments. And that's the way a digitally presented plan will work.
So then I would expect that someone that picking up this document at the introduction or whatever would say, if you want to be kept informed of any changes in this document, please click this link and add your name to the email list of people who will be informed of any changes.
I don't think that's the exact way it works, but there is a system of that nature
Okay,
that ensures people can stay informed.
but it's got to be in the plan, telling people what, where they can easily spot it, that's the way it works.
I would acknowledge that. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so could we, yeah, somewhere could we see that language or whatever, and so, we understand how that's happening.
I'll work with Ryan
Yeah.
Kelly, who runs our digital department, to make sure that that's the case when the digital hub is finally complete and the plan is uploaded full.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. I think that point is well taken, and I know that Ryan is fully capable of figuring out how to address, I wouldn't even say concern, just that call out. All right, Steve Silvera, you're up.
Oh, Erin, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. Just want to make a comment here. I do want to applaud Eric and his staff, Mark, of course, for the work that they've done. And I guess apologize to them in advance, because this is going to be the second time they've had to listen to me on my comments here, because they're gracious enough to give me some time earlier. So I cannot support this document in its current form. I think this document has moved more from a planning document to a political document. I think it is to me, in both in tone as well as many of the items that are contained within it, are much more appropriate for a political party platform as opposed to a planning document. I've not read the whole document. I've read a lot of it. I've actually also gone back to look at the 2008 document, which I participated in developing, to just confirm my suspicions that this document, the current document we're talking about, is in fact more political than the last one. I think that the answer to that is yes. And while the case can be made certainly that the world is more political now than it was in 2008, I think a stronger case can be made that the world is more polemical now than it was in 2008. And I actually think it will be helpful for us and will behoove us to combat those trends. I think it's important as planners that we maintain a role of a touchstone, even, and I realize it's hard to be a touchstone and a living document. So I realize that those two things are somewhat in conflict with each other. I'm troubled both by some of the ideas in here that we're seeking to advance, as well as the overall tone. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I didn't want to vote no on this without putting my vote in its proper context. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else that, Vandana?
I was just wondering if Steve could give some examples of which aspects within the plan you feel are politicized more than perhaps in the past.
All of the sections that talk about people being denied wealth, I think are using what I would personally describe as extremist language. I think, while I don't doubt for 1 second that the Commonwealth, as well as the rest of the nation, have suffered from bigotry and prejudice forever, up through and including today, I think there's an overall emphasis on that I find troubling. I find that the fact that there is no mention in this document on the importance of personal responsibility, personal decision-making, and the consequences of decision-making to lead to a one-sided discussion.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Vandana?
No, I think not.
Okay.
I mean,
I just didn't want to cut you off if you had a follow-up. Great.
No, but I feel like maybe I need to look back at some of those sections. I'm not sure if planning documents typically do raise sort of elements that are more on the personal level, but more of a community-wide or a region-wide sort of focus. But I may need to just go back and refresh my memory of or my read of some of the things that Steve is talking about.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Emily, for assisting me in the chat. So Mo, you're next, and then Keith, you're on deck.
Thank you. I just want to preface this by saying I do support the plan. I think Steve does raise a legitimate point, and in this morning's presentation, something did jump out at me, which actually resonates with that point. So I think we need to be prepared to address the concern that Steve raised, because we will be hearing that from individual boards of individual communities and governing bodies. One of the items that jumped out at me, which I happen to agree with, but I think would be controversial in a community, is moving people to employee-owned positions in small businesses. I think that's a lofty goal, and I support that. But I think goals like that will receive community resistance. And to the extent that we can explain why we're coming from that and what our role in that achieving that goal is, as well as the community's role, I think that would be helpful.
Thanks, Mo. Keith?
Thanks very much. First, I'd want to identify myself as a member of the Metro Common 2050 Executive Advisory Committee, which voted to support this plan as presented, and I do support it. I had a chance to look back at at our last regional plan and was involved in that process when it was happening. And my take on Metro Common 2050 compared to that earlier plan is that this one is much more relevant to the issues that we're facing. It's hard to believe that a plan that was produced just a decade or so ago didn't mention climate change. And we are not only admitting it and addressing so many of the necessary things that we've got to do, but we are, I think, it shows the degree to which this organization is involved in the world around it and is helping to shape that world. And I considered that planning. I got a master's in city and regional planning 40 years ago that I haven't used much over the years. I went into municipal management. But I think this is a very powerful document and appropriate. Certainly, there will be criticism on some things that always happens, but I just wanted to say that I fully support this plan as presented in the spirit in which it's presented. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. Is there any other? Yes, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Just a couple of points. First, I'm going to start with two small points in regard to comments that Keith and Mo made. Metro Future extensively mentioned climate change. It only focused on mitigation and did not have particularly strong mitigation goals and did not discuss adaptation hardly at all. So that's a change here. They're much more aggressive mitigation goals, and there's a full retinue of items related to adaptation and resilience to strengthen the climate aspects of this plan when compared to Metro Future. I was waiting, Mo, for what item you were going to raise as controversial, and you threw me a curveball there. That wasn't the one I was expecting. But I do want to say that our goal of helping folks to establish employee-owned businesses or to convert to employee-owned businesses is one of technical assistance and support. It's not one of mandate or pressure of any kind. The cooperative ownership model in the United States has a long, if a small, history, as anyone who's ever tasted Ocean Spray cranberry juice knows. So I just wanted to be clear about that issue. Steve Silvera and I have, I think, a long and productive relationship, have enormous respect for one another. Eric and I had a lengthy conversation with Steve yesterday afternoon. Being the gentleman he is, he said he didn't know that it was worthwhile for us to waste our time talking with him about it. But I said to him, it is never a waste of time to talk to a board member about their differing views. And, you know, I'm glad we did. I think Steve is correct that there are folks, and not necessarily a small number of folks, who are going to feel that this is, you know, more polemical or more political or goes a little further than they're comfortable with. We have tried very hard not to make it partisan, and I think we've succeeded in that regard. But I can't really argue that it isn't more insistent and forceful than Metro Future was. I think as such, it's a reflection of the times and a reflection of what we heard, not from everyone, but from many folks, and particularly from a sense of impatience, honestly, impatience with planning and impatience with government intervention. I used with Steve and Eric yesterday, and I'll use it again here, the concern that, you know, Metro Future was a very forwardly smart growth document. Sometimes we say smart growth, sometimes we say sustainable development. So is Metro Common. And frankly, so is the executive director of this agency. I believe in smart growth for a whole variety of reasons. But we have to recognize and cope with the fact that in many of our communities, smart growth is seen as the antithesis of a progressive policy. Many communities feel harmed and hurt by smart growth. And we can't just ignore that. We have to ask those communities to help us to devise policies that objectively combine our smart growth goals with other efforts to try and help them to achieve their goals. And I think we've tried to do that in this document. I am confident there are places we went too far, and I am confident there are places we did not go far enough. But I do think it's an accurate reflection of what we heard and is appropriate to the times. And you know, I hope that we'll all, as board members and staff leaders, be able to, you know, work together objectively to not just address criticisms, but also, frankly, hear and listen to criticisms. Because as we move into the arena of trying to turn each policy into an accomplishment, those will be political processes, which will require a level of adjustment and compromise, which I do not think is a bad word, that are necessary to accomplish things through a political process. We might be stating the bar very high here. I think we're going to pursue these objectives. I think we are committed to them. I think we all know some of them will be achievable and others will, you know, some will be achievable 100%, some will be achievable 50%. And that's the spirit we bring into every one of our technical assistance projects. And I think we're going to bring it into our implementation work here as well.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, so I didn't think I'd have to say it, but yeah, I strongly support this. Even though the wording here and there should be made a little bit stronger in some cases, maybe in a few cases made a little bit softer. And now I'll get back to Eric on where those places are. I'm still, but the one place maybe Mark was referring to it was I disagreed with, and maybe I think Mo does also, is stipends for people in local positions. Someone who's worked 40 years, not worked, volunteered 40 years in many local positions and never got paid a penny. I mean, I think that's the beauty of what we have in most communities is people just volunteer their time, not to get paid, but to, you know, to help out and of course they're, you know, they have their own agendas, but but the agenda is, you know, it's not to get paid. Now, maybe some expense reimbursements, but I'm still not happy with the wording of what's being said there. I mean, it seems in that part, you just added where appropriate. I think more needs to be said in that section about where it should or shouldn't be done. But I don't think volunteers or appointed positions should be paid at all. Elected ones, okay, but in most towns, the payment is very small. So, and that shouldn't be the motivation. So that was a point that I think we discussed before, and it's still there.
Thanks, Steve. Is there any other comments at this time? And I got two screens of people, so if I miss you, just kind of help me out here. I'm not seeing anyone, so
Hey,
I
Jenny,
don't.
looks like
I'm
Jenny.
sorry. Jenny. Oh, thank you. I just got that in. Thank you. Jenny.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, it's
Hi.
fine.
Hello, everybody. I was delighted to serve on the External Advisory Committee with some of you here. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done on this plan and all of the process that was involved in bringing it to us today. I'm very enthusiastic about supporting this document and moving it on to the council. I understand that there are, certain elements to it that might be uncomfortable. And we may not all agree on every component in a plan. I know that this is also the case at the local level, by the way. It's very, very hard to agree on every part of one plan together. But I will say that I also recall Metro Future and can remember, I think we used Beatles songs to describe what we ended up choosing. And it was the one in the middle. It was not the more dramatic of the three options. It was the one that was right down the middle so that we could make some progress, but gently with municipalities. And I think that in retrospect, and also where we are today as a region, we actually need a bolder plan. And it is very important that we commit to some of those bolder, stronger goals, even if we don't get there. Because I think that we have to work collectively as a region to make things happen. That might mean changing the way that we did things before and being a little bit more reflective about some of the impacts of things that we chose to do in the past, including what is embedded in the mission of MAPC, which is smart growth. But I think that it is very important for us to work together towards these goals. And so I'm very supportive of moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Spoken like a true municipal planning professional. Is there any other, I'm going to give one last option for comments or questions. Not seeing any, but, and yes, Sharonda, I echo that comment in the chat. So Mo, I see you off mute. Is there anything you'd like to say?
I would like to move adoption of the plan for recommendation to the council at its next meeting with the provision that technical corrections can be made to the text that don't change the substance of what we're approving today.
I will second that motion.
So the motion was made by Mo, and actually the second was made by John DePriest. Steve, you got beaten out on that one. Sorry about that. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All right, if we could all go off mute. I'm going to go a little slow to make sure everyone has the option in time to vote if they're present. So here we go. Sharonda?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Bob Cohen, I believe is absent. Mayor Curtatone, I believe is absent. Tom Daniel, have you joined us?
Yes, I'm here. Aye, thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you for coming. John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Sandra? I believe it's not here. Mo?
Aye.
Tabor?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin? George?
Aye.
Courtney? Jenny?
Aye.
Vandana?
Aye.
Sam Seidel,
Aye.
Steve Silvera,
Nay.
Lauren Shirtliff,
Abstain.
Mayor Spicer, Juan,
Abstain.
Elaine, and Erin. Aye. Okay, so the motion passes with one against, that was Steve Silvera, and the abstentions, hopefully I'll get everyone, but the abstentions are going to be Caitlin, Lauren.
Yes.
Yep, Caitlin, Lauren, Juan. Is that it? Did I get everyone? Oh, go me. So with 3 abstentions, the motion passes. This has been favorably sent to the executive committee for our executive council, I'm sorry, for our October meeting. I want to thank everyone for your discussion and your comments, and I want to thank the EAC for all your work, as well as staff and all the people, all the things. Thank you for all your work on this. I really appreciate it. And I can never, kind of encompass all the thanks in this kind of setting, but thank you for that. So next up in the agenda, going right into it, is the fall council meeting. Mark, do you want to talk about it?
Yes, briefly.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, I'm sorry, I missed you, Karen. Karen, I missed your hand. Go ahead, Karen.
Just really quickly, I'm really excited that all this work has paid off, and I think the process was extremely thorough, and I commend everybody. I mean, I can't even count the hours that are put into it. I thought Mo brought up a really good point, just reflective of this conversation. Is there's going to be a whole lot of conversations about explaining different elements of this plan where it might get some pushback. So I don't know, I'm sure you're already ahead of us in the thinking of how to just sort of prepare to be able to respond to folks. In my work, obviously, we put together fact sheets and all of that stuff. I think the plan itself, just with the policy tags, this policy is related to this goal, is really, really going to be a good visual way for people to understand. But yeah, I think just anticipating those conversations will be very helpful in getting more buy-in down the road. So I just wanted to mention that and echo what Mo had said. So congratulations to everybody that worked on this.
Thank you, Karen. I'm sorry I missed your hand. First go around, I got a lot of boxes open on my screen trying to get this meeting together. So on the topic of the fall council meeting, Mark.
The fall council meeting will be taking place on October 27th. The main item of business will be the approval of the Metro Common Regional Plan. We will also be giving out the MAN Award, which was not done last year, but will be done this year. Which is given to a municipal official for contributing to regional approaches and regional collaboration. I think this year, with everything that's gone on through the pandemic, we're going to have so many heroes nominated. It's going to be very difficult to make a choice. But as usual, we will be working with the officers and with the Mann family on that point. It will be a virtual meeting. Honestly, we struggled with that a little bit. I'd love to get back to a real meeting. I'd love to maybe do an outdoor meeting sometime, but because we have to, plan so far ahead, we have to go with the data where it is right now, and the data where it is right now, I don't think is pointing toward an in-person meeting. So we are going to have another virtual meeting. It becomes exceptionally important to have quorum at that meeting. Even more important, I think, at a virtual meeting than it is an in-person meeting. And so we're going to, really encourage you all to be there and to encourage all of your colleagues to be there. Heidi, I don't know if I've missed anything big on the agenda for October 27th.
Do you have a time of day?
I think it will be 9 or 9:30 as usual. It will be a morning meeting, yes. Heidi, do we have a time yet that's actually scheduled for the proceedings to start or not? Not sure if Heidi is, there she is.
Come off mute, Heidi.
I'm unmuted. It will be the typical, we'll open up the doors figuratively around 9 o'clock for people to sign in and for us to start seeing who's in attendance, because we are going to need quorum. So we want to make sure we give plenty of time to people to log in so that we can start promptly.
So we'll start at 9:30.
Yep.
Executive decision. Open up at 9, start at 9:30.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So please, everyone, mark your calendars. And I, for one, cannot wait until we're back in person. I'm hoping that we can do at least one in person before the end of my term. That'd be cool. Otherwise, I mean, we can always go over the screen. So we'll just take it as it comes. So thank you for that. So next up on the agenda is the date of our next executive committee meeting. So we actually meet again as an executive committee on Wednesday, October 20th, the week before the fall council meeting. Mark, do you have anything to say on that, or other than?
I am hopeful. I am hopeful that the much delayed fiscal 22 work plan, which only needs to go to executive committee, does not need to go to council, will be up for consideration at that time.
Exciting stuff. All right.
I don't know how exciting it is, but we need it to be approved. So
I'm a professional planner, so these kinds of things are exciting. And I appreciate those who are smiling and laughing as well. I see my other planners on
there will
screen,
also
so
be
thank you.
there will also be a fuller, as usual, report from the legislative committee then. And I think based on what they've already recommended, probably a recommendation to support the public banking legislation, which has been filed in both the House and the Senate. And I think Shagana Dawu from the Black Economic Coalition of Massachusetts is likely to be a guest speaker at that executive committee meeting, I think, on that bill. Or although I may be wrong about that, Lizzie, it may be that he's coming to Metro Mayors. Am I right about that? Yeah, okay, never mind, no guest speaker, but we will ask the committee to endorse it.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, next up on the agenda, anything not known at the time of the posting. Mark? Oh, love it. Great, thank you so much. So the last item on the agenda is adjournment, often everyone's favorite item. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have Mo with that motion again and John DePriest with a second. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments before we vote? And again, it's a roll call vote because we are virtual. Not seeing anyone. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, here we go. Sharonda.
Aye.
Heath. Karen.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Bob. Cohen, Mayor Curtatone, Tom Daniel.
Yes.
John DePriest.
Yes.
Yolanda.
Yes.
Sandra. Mo.
Aye.
Tabor.
Aye.
Angie.
Aye.
Steve Olenoff.
Aye.
Caitlin.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Courtney, I think left. Jenny.
Aye.
Vandana.
Aye.
Steve.
No,
Rivera?
just kidding.
I jumped over Sam. Too soon. No,
Yes.
I jumped over Sam Seidel. Sorry about that, Sam. Sam.
Yes.
Moran. Mayor Spicer. Juan.
Aye.
Elaine. And Aaron. Aye. Thank you so much, everyone. The motion carries and the meeting is adjourned at 1:02. Thank you so much for a great meeting, everyone. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.